Ignore my long hair, okay? Ignore my long hair. Yes, I look disheveled, but I promise I'm not. Hello all. Welcome to my room. A new room now. I've been moving, so ignore the boxes. This is going to be a sit-down talk video, a little more serious. Ignore me looking over here as well. I have some brief notes to reference. But yeah, it's a serious video. It's about my projects, and it's about my past friend group with whom I am no longer in contact with. Evan Edinger said it best in that when you say something out into the internet, it sort of becomes a stone in the river of time. So if back in 2010 you said that your favorite food was pie, who cares if your tastes have changed? If you don't update that information, people are going to cross-reference it, they're going to believe it, and they're always going to come back to it. So very much in the same way, if I'm having a fallout with my friends right now, that'll be true for a millennia so long as I don't update it, or at least until I update it. But yes, for now, I am no longer in contact with them. If you're wondering why I'm making this public, it's because, frankly, my project is screwed over at this point. There's nothing else I can do, but I'm tired of explaining to people why my projects always fall through. Often, I'm doing everything right I can on my end, and in this case, I secured all angles to make sure that it could go okay and amenable, and sadly, it didn't. My work and time is an extension of me, and I think there needs to be some accountability. You know, there's no one on the other end pointing out the objectively wrong, and I think giving justice to that story matters. If you are an ordinary, reasonable, fair-minded person, then all I ask is that you don't use anything to infer what might be between the lines. Nothing except what is expressly conveyed here in this video can be implied or used to draw conclusions. I will do my best to be concise and not exploit ambiguity. I found it appropriate to make a video about a project I was working on and why, at least for now, it isn't happening. That's not to say it won't happen in the future. I fully intend to make it, just not right now. But the reason it fell through is why I'm making this video. This is to disseminate my thoughts on the matter and my project. Last year, early in the year, I started planning a feature film at the time. It was a comedy, tentatively titled Fish On, the Great Fish Off. Now I know that as a comedy it's harder to take serious, but I took the project very serious, and people who make comedy films do take it very serious, even though the plotline is supposed to be funny and the character relationships are funny and that sort of thing. The name was later changed to Fishin' Impossible to be more accessible to a bigger viewership. I know that that's funny as well. I acknowledge that. This wasn't my first rodeo. I had attempted to make a film of this size before, and I wrote around my budget and gauged interest in casting from my friends. I dipped into the pool of my friends for the cast members because they had been intermittently offering the project ideas, and together we wrote it around them. After many weeks of planning, I asked who was interested, and 3 people in my friend group said that they were. My friend Alex, you might know him as Relax-A-Lax on YouTube, Dion, and Peter. All guys from the Relax cast if you saw it. We did a script read-through after lots of weeks of sitting down and discussing the logistics of it over coffee and settings and trying to schedule and get solid dates down. I wrote a legally binding contract so that I could officiate the process, and I sent it their ways. The contract, I explained to them, was created due to past experiences. In the past, I have had issues with commitment to my projects, and since planning films can expend months of time and yes, even my own money, I wanted to secure an obligation to perform, and in return was to offer a good or service on my end. They understood this, said it wasn't necessary, but I assured them I needed this extra layer of security and that I wasn't going to succumb to the pitfalls of some of my past projects. If it was up to me, if I was playing every character, none of my films would ever fall through. But that isn't the case. I rely on others and can be really demoralizing to pour months, sometimes years into something and have it fall apart at the seams because someone is internally unsure of their own commitment. As you would understand, a contract is a written or spoken agreement. The purpose of the contract is to establish the agreement that the parties have made and to fix their rights and duties in accordance with that agreement. It also creates a more implicit obligation to perform the act you signed to do. If you don't do it, there are obvious legal implications. It's why most productions and companies rely on contracts to enforce that their ends get met. That's just the business of things. In the case of Relax-A-Lax and Peter, it was a spoken agreement, and understood. To say that they didn't agree would be irresponsible and untrue. They did. They told me various times that they were in. I have that written by them as well, without coercion. And Dion, on the other hand, signed the contract and said that he agreed with it. We sat down together over coffee, and I asked, what should I change, if I should word anything different, or even if he wanted to be paid? He said no, that he didn't want to be paid, and we'll return to that. The contract, as of then and now, didn't offer money but instead a good or service, as it required. Contracts for goods and services are similar in that they both place legal obligations on contracting parties and require consideration. Dion gave it his signature and, as the contract stated, he was to let me know his soonest availability. We were slated for principal photography, which means the actual filming in April, and obviously a global pandemic occurred, COVID-19, and in light of other studios halting their productions, I did the same. I followed suit because it was the only sensible thing to do. Now on to the friend stuff. This is irrelevant to the film, but it's also relevant enough that I must say it because it's why the film fell through. So to talk about the project and the project sort of falling apart, it has to happen with some synchronicity to the friend stuff. We'll return to that. Something came up with my friends later that month over coffee in which I felt they had sort of attacked my passion and drive. I'm also pitching an animated series, and they said that they didn't see any quantifiable success or progress from me, as though I owed them it. The whole conversation was odd and preachy and was just sort of the tip of the iceberg of being judged by a group of guys who I felt should have been more humbled. In that regard, I am 3, sometimes 4 years younger than them. I'm 21, and they've definitely made some decisions that, although of wavering agreeability, I never interjected an opinion. I'm not the type of person to input my 2 cents. I don't want to be the peanut gallery. That whole coffee meetup felt odd, and it was just 3 of my friends. It was Alex, Dion, and another, Paul. It was worded in a way in such that it was condescending, and despite their claim that it was a worry and support for my success, if you could have heard it, I think you would have felt the same way as me. Someone who was trying to support me would at least try and figure out what it is I'm trying to do. So that night I got home and wanting to defend myself, wanting to draw a line in the sand around myself and sort of say back off, I wrote them a document. The document was to emphasize how sort of unrewarding and difficult it is to be an artist in an industry that entirely relies on luck and timing, and sometimes neither of those. I thought Relax of all people would understand that. It's not the layman's job. It has hurdles that are quite massive, and the job itself, though personally gratifying, can often not be insofar as money. There's tons of animators or writers or artists out there who are working for Coffee Change, or the animators in Vancouver who are doing overtime without getting paid overtime. So that sort of thing. Pitching a TV series is not an overnight endeavor. I know that. I'm 21, but I don't know any showrunner who is 21. I think holding me to that expectation can be a lot, and perhaps a little unrealistic. Right now might not be the time. I understand that discomfort often pressurizes results and that you have to go out of your comfort zone to make something good. I know that. But it might not be the time. I cannot just uproot and take off to California. I have family here. I had friends. And I had relationships that I cherish. And I still have relationships that I cherish. So anywho, we all have ample time. And none of us are adequately using it. I mean, they made a few comments on how I spend my time, but they think I'm privileged and afforded much more free time than them, and thus should have more viable of a product to show, which isn't true. These are all choices. I don't meander any more than anyone else. Everyone wastes time. I'm not special for that. It isn't a measure of how bad I want my project. It's a journey that you know a minor piece of. We all in the group have projects we started but haven't finished. I'm barely the only malefactor here. Alex said he was going to develop a game in 2013 and has been singing a similar tune since. Nobody comments on the stagnancy of that goal because they value money as a show of progress, and he's made money. The group definitely treats us different, me and Alex. If I'm making a video or movie or short film or anything, they say they can't be in it, that they're not creative people. If Alex asks them to, they all jump at the opportunity. Suddenly, when they can have their 5 seconds of fame, they're in. I haven't seen them extend themselves for anything else. They'd sooner congratulate me on working at McDonald's my whole life than pursuing the career I want so long as it made money. But however the guys approached it, where are you in life? What do you want? Feels like you haven't moved at all since last year, so, like, what's happening? That just came off as preachy or judgmental. That is defining my progress entirely, maybe not informatively. That's an opinion. How do you reply to that? I mean, that's how it appears externally, but it undermines the many mental things I had to overcome as well as tangible things for my pitch. I guess artwork, 200 pages worth of scripts, and years of planning isn't enough for them. They still consider me lazy, living a luxurious life with zero external pressures to trudge my life forwards. I did have a job for at least half a year, but unfortunately that company filed for bankruptcy and closed down. They didn't like the document I wrote. Alax said that I have a narrow definition of art. I said that art shouldn't be comparable to their jobs because of how unique being an artist is. There's no course to become a showrunner or to pitch an animated TV series. It's like cutting a path through a jungle with a machete. They got offended because they thought I underplayed the effort that their more STEM jobs required. I wasn't saying that someone not working in art is doing less, but that they shouldn't be compared. They stopped talking to me entirely. Next, I found out that my document, sent to the only 3 people I went out to coffee with and had that conversation, was shared by one of them to the entire group. Now the entire group was offended. Those who didn't even earn a right to be. It wasn't written to them, it was shared behind my back, and they even discussed it behind my back in a group call. I am certain of it. I had remained in contact with Dion and planned to go biking, play tennis and all that. I touched base throughout quarantine. That was my last limb to the group. Even Alax had deleted Facebook or blocked me. I don't know. One day, Dion came over to my house to go biking, but I had absolutely fallen asleep and had missed it. He didn't say much after that. At a point, I had seen endless Snapchats of my friends, Peter, Dion, and them, going out fishing, going out, and so I thought it might be a more appropriate time or a more comfortable time to restart talks about the movie. So I brought it up in our movie group chat we shared. It was the resource to plan and discuss it. I asked when next they would be free to film, and that the sooner we adjust back to scheduling, the easier it'll be for me at least. Dion was the only one who replied, and he said, I'm free, insert days here, but I don't think the other guys are exactly in, so I don't know how we'll do it. And I said, don't worry about it, honestly, just offer me your schedule. I still have my crew and my camera operator, and I had even reworked the script to better suit just our characters driving the plot, as I could anticipate some of this might happen. I reached out to the other 2, Alax and Peter. Peter only said, I'm out, and that was it, and Alax said he wasn't participating. Despite Alax's talks of me sometimes being unreliable, it can be said that at least I've committed and came through on more of his projects than he did on mine, and less fell through because of it. Dion messaged me and asked some questions about moving forwards, and I provided answers. He told me, I'm obviously not going to drop this, I'm contracted, so when do you want to do it? And he took a week, then needed the next because it offered a little more time and flexibility. We agreed to begin filming some of the first scenes on a Thursday, and we were going to meet at my house to do it. Thursday rolled around, and Dion messaged me telling me he was going to be working into the night and that it wasn't a good day for it. So we talked a bit more over text, and Dion said he can't see himself committing to this right now because of some personal issues. I told him to take all the time he needed, the rest of June, and just to keep me in the loop on his soonest availability so I could plan around it and accordingly. He didn't reply for a few days, or if he did, it was in variable degrees. One day I said, we should talk, and he asked, well, what's there to talk about? And I said, the movie, of course, and just that I wanted to clarify a foreseeable goal and maybe date. He said that I should probably get somebody else. I reminded him that it wasn't fair to ask me to get someone else. I'd spent 6 months in pre-production planning on the movie, and I had already lost 2 major cast members. I was getting the slight nudging feeling that he might have been dropping it following suit sort of way, you know, because my other friends did. Because when I mentioned it at first, continuing the project, he mentioned the other 2 removing their involvement and sort of hinged it on that. I think that was natural. When everyone is turning their backs on me, obviously I can expect a bit of that. Dion in the center of that group, you know, I could see that he would be with that. He said that I should please get someone else. I didn't want to bring up the contract. I thought that it was implicit, and I wanted to work around every path before reminding him of that obligation, because I sort of just wanted to make it like anything but that. After all, I had that sign to secure that something like this wouldn't happen. We discussed a bit longer, and I told him that, from my perspective, he had to see how it was a bit of an odd inconsistency to tell me that he was swamped with work, but then also be going out consistently with the guys, and that hopefully, if he could, you know, make time for that, he could honor his commitment to me. He said that I was not being a good friend, not minding his mental health, and focused on my own agenda. The same could be said for my own mental health. All my friends are dropping me, and I've poured an invaluable resource, time, into half a year planning on this film. Of course, part of me cares about someone being reliable. He then proceeded to tell me that he wasn't going to do it, to get someone else. When I finally mentioned the contract, he treated it as a laughable footnote, like a desperate attempt to drag him back in. But it wasn't. It was a legally viable contract to which he was bound. And so, friendship aside, yes, I expected him to side with his own commitment. He said the contract didn't exchange goods or services. I reminded him it did. He tried to poke any holes in it, even though it was airtight. Do you think going against a contract is distasteful? Do you think it's illegal? Because it is. I said, look, as an adult, you must understand the severity of a contract when signing one. Of course it's going to have consequences. Instead of a tame answer, he said, really? You're threatening me? And I said, no, a contract isn't a threat. It's implicit that going against one creates repercussions. It's why they exist in the first place. I didn't make this up to trick him or use any fine print. The point is, my project fell through because contracts weren't honored, which more than anything is unfortunate. But it's also unprofessional. This is not to say anything about Dion as a friend, because honestly, he was a good friend and the rest were until they weren't. Maybe he's shown his true colors. Only time will tell. Or not tell. This is a group that is juvenile, that has been willing to turn around and talk behind others' backs before, my own brother included. Last I was there, they even dogged someone who's still in the group. They are righteous and they enjoy getting together to pick apart others. I don't know why I thought I could be free from that. If they could do it to others, surely they could do it to me. And if you think I'm wrong, well, I can think of a few examples. But I just wanted to say that I don't endorse this behavior. That wasn't professional. The contract situation is admittedly frustrating because it defies all the laws. It's irresponsible and obviously a bad choice of action. For that reason, this film is postponed.